Hello, guys. So I hope you guys are all well and safe and having a great week so far. And tonight, Middlesex University Product Design Engineering and Design Engineering are really excited to host our 13th talk in the annual guest lecture series. These run weekly throughout the academic year on Thursday evenings. They bring together a vibrant mix of speakers from across the full spectrum of design and engineering. So a mix of leading practitioners, opinion leaders, radical thinkers, and emerging talents to inspire and support professional development for yourselves. Tonight, we're really excited to host Bradley Harper. He's a senior recruitment consultant at RHL Recruitment. He's an industrial design recruiter. He's worked with some of the biggest brands and agencies globally. So I'm an example. He's recruited for Shark Ninja, Arrival, Samsung, PDD, GHD, Joseph, amongst many others as well. And Bradley's also the co-founder of Design Truth, the industry voice running a really successful podcast series, Design Truth, currently ranked the 4th best design podcast in Guatemala. And a few thousand people have listened and tuned into this, and he had an odd stint in the Austrian charts as well. You can listen to these on Apple, Spotify, and YouTube. And details of the talk and Bradley were sent to your emails ahead of this talk, including links to Bradley's social media, LinkedIn, and website as well. So definitely feel free to have a browse, tune into the podcast, connect on the Discord channel, and explore the blog posts as well. And without any further ado, Bradley Harper with a talk titled The Portfolio Chat. So it's all yours, Bradley.
Cheers for that. It sounds like you've that was well rehearsed. So hi everyone. I appreciate I can't see you, and these things are a little bit more awkward, aren't they? Not in the same room. But yeah, just to echo what Ahmed said, I do hope everyone's all right. I'm told that quite a lot of you have just come off the back of another lecture, so some pretty serious commitment to come and chat to me on a Thursday night, but yeah, do genuinely appreciate it. I'm not sure how some of your other talks have gone, but this one might be subtly different in the sense that I'd really appreciate it if we could try and keep this as interactive as possible. I kind of treat this talk that I've been doing, and this isn't the first talk that I've done. I'm doing this kind of very weird and wonderful roadshow of kind of universities across the country at the minute. And I almost try and treat this as like kind of facilitating a conversation amongst yourselves, because this thing we're going to talk about here, the portfolio, is something that's going to, unfortunately, it's going to follow you as your career develops. This isn't going to go away, and it's something you're seriously going to need to pay an awful lot of attention to if you haven't done already. I may as well introduce myself a little bit more, although Ahmed did do a pretty sterling job, so thanks for that. So I'm not a designer. I've never confessed to be a designer. As I've already pointed out, I did this on Canva, so very much not a designer. And but hopefully over the last 7 years of doing industrial design recruitment, I think I might know a little bit about what employers look for. And that's just from, thankfully, being at the right place at the right time and just having the luxury, I suppose, of going to meet some of those companies that you see down there and actually spending time with the people that work in these environments and actually getting the true feedback on a portfolio, not necessarily the watered down version that you may receive. So over the years, I've picked up a few bits and pieces that's kind of got me this far. So yes, as Ahmed pointed out, I do a podcast. Kind of this is Design Truth is very much my kind of 5 to 11:30, 12 o'clock in the morning, and RHL is my 9 to 5. And we effectively just chat about life in design. I think is the best kind of set of images I can provide to you of what Design Truth is all about. It's about community. It's about getting together. It's about actually in an era of kind of misconceptions and key shot renders. We actually tell it how it is. We actually tell the truth. That's the whole point. And over the next 40 minutes, 45 minutes, as we go through this kind of set of slides, there will be some unfortunate truths that come along the way. But please don't take it personally. It's just hopefully something you can kind of take and learn, because trust me, over the years, I've seen some pretty horrid portfolios, and we're going to try and avoid that happening for you guys. So that's why I've started to rope myself in and say, stop doing all the cardinal sins that everyone's been doing for the last 20 years. And anyone that follows me on Instagram will know that I don't necessarily like design for Instagram. So you're going to hear why over the next 40 minutes. And please do ask any questions along the way. I generally don't mind if you unmute your mic and have a chat. It really doesn't, I'm not too precious about that kind of thing. And I look forward to hearing your views along the way, so then I can steal them for my next talk next week. So let's crack on. Before we start, as I say, I want to try to keep this as interactive as possible. So one question I've asked everyone from every university so far is I'd love to know what your thoughts are on the job market at the minute. Because ultimately, whilst you're doing this degree, and some of you may be year one, and some of you will be year two, and some of you will be year four or masters or whatever, ultimately, you want to get a job at the end of it, right? University is not there forever. You have to venture out to the real world. So how do we feel about the job market in one word? Are you excited? Are you apprehensive? Are you a little bit annoyed, frustrated about the circumstances that we're living in right now? You can put it in the chat, or you can unmute yourself. I really don't mind. But if you could just kind of sum it up into one word, and don't worry, it all kind of makes sense at the end. But it'd be great just to get a feel for the room, really, if you're kind of bricking it, or you're actually pretty pumped to get started into the world of work.
Navpreet saying competitive. Talk Vidas is saying opportunistic. Aurel Marianne is saying frustrated. Ralph Paulin saying nervous. Drew is saying eccentric. Harry saying excited. Imran saying anxious. Morgan saying limited. Vlad says nervous as well.
It's amazing,
Jade as well,
isn't it?
Nervous. Nervous is a
Difference
common
of opinion.
Yeah. Brady's foreboding. Howard saturated. Pfizer saying limited. Yago Gonzalez said meh. And Tom Millward, unpredictable. Saha, confusing.
Cool. I suppose we could hook that round to some questions at the end if you've got any specifics of why you may be feeling that way. But I do genuinely appreciate that kind of level of interaction. I hope we can kind of keep that going throughout. As I say, it's after 5. Feel free to crack open a beer or whatever. No, not precious on this side of the virtual screen. So in terms of what we're going to talk to you guys about today is those kind of 3 things you see kind of on your left-hand side. So the purpose of actually why we put this thing together, and why this thing is going to be this kind of noose around your neck as your career develops. The main thing is a basic structure of like what do employers actually want to see, and also explain some context to why. So if you go back to slide 2, you saw a list of client names on the bottom there, and some of them are startups, some of them are brands, some of them are agencies. They're all looking for different things, but people put a portfolio as a document and try to apply it to everyone. But actually, people are looking for subtly different things. And we'll come on to that as we go on, or into a Q&A, and to give you some kind of real life examples of what employers are looking for, whether it be pre-COVID or post-COVID. A lot of these things are going to remain the case. Now, the purpose of why you put this together, I've given 3 reasons, and I'll throw the question out to you at the end. And as I say, the reason why I do this is mainly so I can steal it for my next talk. But number 1 is the purpose of why you actually put a portfolio together is to get you an interview. A portfolio never gets you a job. It's a really important distinction to make. And I hope that actually gives you a little bit more hope, because I think people put a lot of pressure on this document that this is the thing that's going to unlock the door and get you a job. All it really does is just open the door. It doesn't actually land you kind of the gig. There's a lot more steps to come in terms of that side of it. The second thing is obviously to showcase what you can bring to the table. I can't tell you how many times people call me over the years and say that they've seen a job and they think they're right for it. But if I haven't seen what you can bring to the table, then how on earth am I going to get you that interview? How on earth are you going to get that job if you can't actually visually demonstrate what it is you can bring to the table? My job as a recruiter is to weirdly turn the subjectivity of design into the objective. That's what my job actually is. It's to effectively kind of tap into the mind of the design director or chief design officer, whatever these people want to call themselves these days, and ultimately kind of take that view of what they're looking for and kind of go, here you go, this is it. So different employers are looking for different things. So to showcase your different skills, that's kind of number 2. And to number 3 is actually to provide insight into you as a person. And it's something I'm going to reiterate quite a bit over the next half hour. You're actually employing a person, you're not employing a designer. But too often, what I kind of get a little bit annoyed about is that people don't really talk about them as a person, what they do outside of work. I'm sure you've got a life outside of design. And if you don't, I'd be quite concerned. So, what I would say is that make sure that you're talking a bit about you, your personality, what makes you tick. And that's one of the things that I think gets quite lost in all of this. The job, well, my job, and I suppose the role of a design director as well, is the sense that any person that you're employing into a company, you want to make sure they're going to stick around for a long period of time. You want to make sure that they're going to get on culturally within the company. You want to go make sure that this is the kind of person that would love to go to the social get-togethers and all that kind of stuff. And so to give insight into you as a person really does make that differentiator of, is this person going to be right for the company, or is this person just quite good at design? Now, I don't know, maybe you guys have got your own suggestions. What else can you think of why you put a portfolio together? Why are you always going to be asked, I want to see your work? Does anyone have any follow on to that? Or do you think we've pretty much covered it?
I would say to potentially demonstrate how you approach a problem and sort of the thinking you employ to work your way through that problem, whatever it is.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And you can see the stuff online, can't you? When you look at it from a visualization standpoint, you think, well, that's fantastic. But I think what employers are looking for is that deeper thinking and that ability to, how do you go about solving a problem? So you're absolutely right. And we probably talk about that as this.
Matty Beale's also in the chat saying that to prove that you've got the skills and the skill set.
Yeah, as I say, to showcase your skills, to prove that you can actually do the job. We can all talk the talk, but unfortunately, there comes a point in your career where you gotta walk the walk, and you gotta back up all those things, all those buzzwords you've put on your CV. So to cover that off, as this slide goes on, I've got these kind of throwaway quotes and lines, and these are mainly quotes from the podcast. So the people that we bring on the podcast are people that are in industry. So whether it's agency owners, whether it's lead designers at companies that I've probably dragged on to come on to this podcast. So people I've met or whatever, and clients. So these are companies that you saw on that slide, all the way back on slide 2. And there's a few quotes that are dotted around this, and these are just a few kind of the main takeaways that I really want you to take with you, because I just genuinely appreciate when someone's talking at you for an hour, a lot of it just goes over your head. But if there's just one or two things that you can take from this, these are the kind of things I really want you to kind of focus on. And this one here is you start with the problem and not the product, and tell the story of that. I was weirdly enough on a British Industrial Design Association bidder webinar quite recently. They're talking about design, and a chap there, I can't remember his name. He said that designers aren't very good storytellers. That was his line. And design is all about storytelling. So I think when we kind of go through the structure of how this thing's going to look for you, I really want you to have this in the back of your mind. It's like, you start with a problem, you don't start with a product. And it's never been more relevant when you think about it, because how many times do you see work and you just think, this is just going to end up in the ocean, isn't it? It's not really solving a problem. It's just, solving a dent in someone's pocket. So start with the problem, guys. Don't start with the product. Get me hooked on why you're actually doing this thing in the first place. That's what gets my attention. That's what gets the design director's attention. And we are in the attention economy. And if you ever watched that that documentary on Netflix, the name is escaping me, Ahmed. I can't quite think of what one it is, but it's all around about, I have to find it. I can't think of what it is, but it's all around the internet and weird stuff. It's all about attention, and I can't remember it. But if someone knows the name of that documentary,
The Social Dilemma.
The Social Dilemma. That's the one. Mm-hmm. Got me out of a hole there, Ahmed. Cheers for that. So watch that, and then you can start, and you get a feel for attention and how imperative it is and how little of it you get. I've been in. I remember going to meet Anthony Joseph once, and gave him these list of portfolios, and Yeah, you didn't get a lot of time in terms of the reviewing of a folio is quite savage. So yeah, you need that attention. You've got to grab it quite quickly, and that's a great way of being able to do that. These are two more podcast quotes, and these are actually from a chap called Wyn Jones, who heads up the design team for a company called Entia, which look at, I think it's like remote monitoring for cancer patients or those that have been unfortunately unwell, and they want to, trying to spend their kind of final days as kind of less time in a hospital as kind of possible. So it's all about this kind of remote monitoring. And these are two things that really kind of irated him when we spoke about portfolios. That was actually like a portfolio dedicated episode. We do talk about other things. And one of which was treat your portfolio like a proper design output. So I can give you a perfect example today of where someone sent me their portfolio for a job I was talking to them about, and they sent it through to me on like a WeTransfer link, and it was like 40, 50 megabyte or something like that. And if you're kind of in the world of work and you're presenting to a client, to a stakeholder, or whatever, you need to be able to get your file sizes right, so you're not kind of firing over massive Dropbox links all day long and things like that. It's like a life skill. And that, again, is just like treat your portfolio like a proper design output. Treat it like you would do if you was working for a company and you was pitching for work or something like that. And it's one of those key things that people just don't think of, to treat it like a proper piece of work. This is probably one of the most important PDFs you're ever going to package together, and it gets even more important every time you do it. So treat it like a proper piece of work. Put your life and soul into this thing. And yes, crappy graphics are the worst. There's nothing subjective about crappy graphics. When you look at your portfolio after we do this, or you share it with a friend or whatever, I really want you to look and go, why on earth did I do that? Why did I put that in there? That is awful. Because sometimes you've got to actually kind of be a little bit savage with your own feedback and just go, why would someone employ me based on that? And is this really me and who I am? Is this really kind of showing what I bring to the table? So we'll come on to structure and and kind of guide you through it. And again, I'd love your ideas so I could steal them for the next talk. So I think kind of touches on this earlier, but I want to know about you as a person just as much as I want to know about you as a designer. And maybe it's because I'm an external influence in the sense that I'm not a designer. So I look at things more from like a HRE cultural kind of perspective of, does this person fit into the organization? Is the onboarding of this person going to be a little bit easier than the normal? And what I mean by that is I need to make sure this person's there for a long period of time. And there are normally some quite early signs of when something isn't going to work out. I can give you a great kind of first-hand example of this, of hobbies and interests. Now, if hobbies and interests come through and every hobby and interest I see is a solo-based activity, so it's something you do effectively by yourself, that rings alarm bells to me, because design is a collaborative process. It's team-based. And so what employers want to see is the fact that your life outside of the workplace is in a collaborative setting, in the sense of you're not going to potentially be this lone wolf in the corner, but you're someone that's going to get stuck in, and that is a real key thing, and even more evident now when we're working remotely, right? So there are people that are entering companies and have never seen their work colleagues. They wouldn't even know who they are if they walk past them in the street. So you need to make sure that anyone at any level, grad, designer, director, whatever, you need to make sure that they're going to fit seamlessly into an organization. And you do that by learning more about them as people long before you offer them the job. I've had one case in 7 years where someone's left within the first 6 months, and he left after day 2. So that was an awkward conversation, but nonetheless, one of the key differentiators of making sure people stick around is getting to know people. And If you need some more clarification on that, then by all means, let me know. The hero shot, I do slag off Instagram, but it does ring true in one thing, in the sense of it does captivate your attention. The beautiful kind of visualizations and key shot renders and the like, they do kind of perk your interest. But what we're going to come on to later is what is the substance behind that. But you do need to perk that attention up in the first place. Now, there are so many examples online of kind of great examples of this. And one thing I would recommend that you do is, as you put this together, is think about what are the kind of, where do I want to work? You know, dream job situation, you're all chatting amongst yourself and, you know, who do you want to work for? Is it Tesla? Is it Apple? Or is it some weird startup in the back end of nowhere? It's subjective. But what I want you to do is, at the end of this, is I want you to go onto LinkedIn. I want you to find the designers that work in these companies, and I want you to Google their portfolios. So first name, surname, and portfolio. I can guarantee you will find some copy of their work somewhere, whether it's their university work or their Behance stuff, Coraflot, Instagram, maybe an article they did and they, you know, showed their idea. You can track these people down, and trust me, I do it as part of my job, and it's one of the ways I can get hold of people and numbers and all that kind of stuff. So you can find anyone's work. The internet is this most beautiful thing. So if you think, okay, I want to work at Leia, for example, go and track down the designers at Leia and just have a look at their work from years before. Just get an understanding of how they actually perked the interest of those employers. Honestly, it's the best learning you can ever have, of understanding of what makes a potential hiring manager tick. You just need to be a little bit creative if you're Googling to track down the work, because a lot of the cases it may be their grad stuff from time gone by. Solving a problem, I think it's important to reiterate this. So product design is about solving a problem. Now, product design is probably just as much a digital term now as a physical one. And I appreciate there's some people on this call that are from, you know, different, slightly subtle degrees in terms of robotics or whatever. And you may be looking at this and thinking, this probably doesn't make much sense to me. But I still think the industry is about solving a problem. Now, actually, one of the reasons why I think it's really important to make that distinction is because if you think about modern day design, I mean, to my left here, I have a Dyson Hot and Cool. Now, I can't tell you how many times I've seen that piece of work on a portfolio, probably over 10, 20, 30 times. Someone has claimed that they've designed that thing. Now, trust me, not one single individual has designed that product. So it isn't so much how did I solve that, it's how did we solve that problem. So be honest about your involvement in solving that problem. Stop trying to claim that you did everything, because trust me, you might be able to blag me as the recruiter, but you can't blag it through the design director. They honestly, they know when you're lying. So process. A podcast episode we did literally last week, we don't just talk to kind of senior designers, we actually talk to grads. I think it's important to get every single perspective in the design industry and talk to as many different people as you can. It's the best way to form an opinion on something is by talking to people on both sides of the coin. And one of the interesting things is there was a particular grad that was on there, a chap called Charlie, and he's very prominent on these big kind of social media platforms. And one of the things he said was, I wish I showed more process. I wish I kept more process pages on my portfolio. Now, you're in the place now where you're kind of putting all this stuff together. So I really want to make that kind of distinction to you, is to keep the process bits. Now, the reason why we do that is because someone might hate your actual design. They actually might not like it. Design, again, is quite subjective, but they really will appreciate how you got there. And that actually may land you the interview. As I say, the portfolio doesn't get you the job, but they may appreciate your process. They may have, again, the point that was made earlier about your about problem solving. I hope that kind of ties into the point you were making, in the sense of they might not like it, but they may really appreciate how you got there. So in terms of process, just before I hit the page that takes us over to the actual structure of this portfolio, what do you think I mean by process? What do you think is important to show from a portfolio? What is it that you think that people are going to be employers are going to be interested in seeing?
I would say that now, after working in one of the bigger companies, is they're looking for the research, like the background, at least in my case, and preparation for interview. Basically, I ended up in Jacobs and Goodyear I got the interview by portfolio, of course, but for interview, I prepared super quick one small, any kind of idea project and visualization, which took me like 4 hours, and showed them what I can do under stress and quick conditions. And they also look a lot for the teamwork and innovation, at least from my side of view.
Yeah, and if you don't mind me asking, what kind of environment was you working in? Was it physical product design? Was it digital? Was it startup? What was the kind of environment of the team you was?
Okay, so at the moment, until end of the February, I'm based in Netherlands, doing placement in Douwebers, which is like one of the largest coffee companies.
Nice.
Coffee producer planet, and I'm working with front-end innovation. So it's mostly about ideation creation, and they chose me because of my background and passion for business. So because in the work we have business and design at the same time, plus innovation, plus connecting, plus teamwork. But from March going to purely industrial design to Goodyear to work with tires, and I'm still not sure exactly what the experience is going to be because I'm still not there. But from what I talk with them, it's going to be more digital again, but based on real products. It's just that the product selection is small. It's not like layer design.
No, interesting. I suppose it's nice there that the research was super relevant to that job, and so you kind of tailored that to that. Whereas maybe another employer may be looking for things more on the back end, manufacturing, prototyping, that kind of thing. But certain jobs, you're really going to be focusing in on that kind of research, ideation, the real kind of early stage stuff, not so much about pushing product to market. But it's interesting in the sense of like your business background or knowledge was something they were interested in, because I can't tell you how many times I've seen on portfolios or feedback that I've had is that I didn't feel this person was that kind of commercially astute. They weren't, and again, it comes down to this kind of key shot thing. Well, I'm sorry if I keep slagging off key shot, but it's this kind of design intent of we need to mass manufacture this thing. And so that needs to be in your thought all the time, because unfortunately how the world works is that a company needs to turn a profit. That's just the way, and that's all the stakeholders that care about. And here's the thing, the stakeholders aren't necessarily designers, they're business people. And so that's such an important life skill, I suppose, that you've kind of learned there, is that this is the company's objective, is to make money, whether we like it or whether we don't. And so having that design intent of, we need to mass manufacture this thing, you need to get it into your kind of mindset super early, whether you hate the idea of capitalism or whatever. But it's just unfortunately just how you're going to land a job in design, as much as that may frustrate some of you. That's just the reality. So yeah, appreciate your kind of insight into that. Don't know if anyone else had any views around process.
There's a lot of thoughts coming through on the chat. So like Navpreet's mentioning sketches, idea generation, prototyping. Ralph's talking about research, development, conversations, the innovations and direction. Lizzie's again talking about the initial sketches, the prototypes, your method for figuring things out.
Yeah.
Joe Salem's talking about how you tackle the problem. A detailed one from Harry Miller Adams got how you got from A to B through understanding your problem, showing the research, initial sketches, prototyping, CAD models and renderings. And then Tom Mill was talking about the journey with all the hurdles that you faced, both the ones you overcame and the ones that caught you.
Yeah, I like the last one. Yeah, I'll steal that one. Thank you. Yeah, a lot of you are thinking along the right lines, and there's some stuff I've put here, and honestly, there's so much more I could have put on. It's just I'm limited for space, and I'm not a designer. So, that's that one. Hold on, another quote coming. Sorry, probably should name my presentation a bit But here's another throwaway line of hiring managers want to see everything, and hiring managers do not want you to show everything. So when you talk about process there and you mention all these different things, what they want to see is all of that stuff, but they don't want to see every piece of work you've ever done. That's what they do not want to see. They just want to see a couple of projects which demonstrates those different skills you touched upon there. So, and that depends from company to company. And we had a great example before of the chap that just spoke just before of, you know, some companies you look at on that list like Joseph or maybe Shark Ninja, it's all about design for manufacture. It's all about getting something to market. That's what they want to see. But other companies like Kinnear 4 or whatever, they might want to see more concept stuff, ideation, because their work to their end client maybe just more front end research and that kind of front end stuff. So they don't necessarily want to see, you know, mold tools, and they're not interested. It's not within their kind of bracket. So absolutely be fluid with that in terms of, you know, what kind of companies you want to kind of approach, but definitely make that distinction. I can't tell you how many times people have just said, right, this is all of my work. This is my kind of design life, which was This Is My Life was a program way before your time. But This Is My Life, they package it up into this PDF and they just kind of like send it out and hope something resonates and sticks with the manager. Trust me, it doesn't get the interview. So if we move on to structure, so there's a lot to take in there, and where you see there's little different bits and pieces like testing, where there's all that stuff, there's more I could put on there. And that list was put together not by me, that was actually put together by, it was a couple of months ago now. It was on our Instagram, and I just said to designers, I'm doing this thing, what is the most important thing? And these were for people in industry. This is what their kind of go-to stuff. I mean, I could have put on things like CMF, for example, and there's other different bits and pieces. But I do really like that last comment of showing not just the good bits, but also the stuff that you didn't get right. Design isn't necessarily this kind of thing, you know, where everything's perfect. You know, things go wrong, but you never hear from it. And I love that idea of just showing the failures, and showing how you try to overcome that problem, because it taps into that kind of process thing earlier. So how you're going to, hopefully, I mean, you don't have to take my advice, but how you're going to actually put this portfolio together is on like a project by project basis. There's a couple of reasons why you do it. And the first reason why you do it is just it's far more easier to digest from a reader's perspective, but also it's far easier just to tweak in terms of, I don't think you should be doing this thing where like every portfolio is the same. Like you should be tweaking it depending on who you're applying to. And I appreciate it's time consuming, but you should be tweaking it for every single job or every single bracket of job, more than just saying high DCA design, you know, and then put high PDD. Like it needs to be more tailored than that, because that really perks up interest. So having this kind of like project by project method from a folio standpoint just means it's so much more digestible for you in terms of like, okay, I'll just take that out or I'll just move that here, rather than you having to like faff around, you know, for every single job under the sun. So that's something I'd seriously suggest. In terms of like numbers of projects, there's no magic number. It goes back to the point of how many skills and how many projects are you going to need to show to demonstrate all those different bits and pieces that we're touching upon here. 3, 4, maybe. It gets a little bit easier as your career develops, but it also becomes more challenging, because as your career develops, you're going to get hit by something called an NDA, and you're going to get hit quite hard by it. So not everyone can necessarily show their best work. And so this frustration is going to follow you as your career develops. And one way that I always suggest, was 2 ways that I always suggest to designers when they get to that point, is 1, personal projects, and 2, perhaps just do your university work again, because you're going to get to a point where you've, I don't know, worked for Dyson for 4 years, and then you're going to want to move on, and then you're going to be like, I actually can't show anyone what I've been doing for the last 4 years. And then you have this kind of panic for a couple of days, and then you kind of, well, sometimes you work it out, sometimes you don't. But again, project by project is kind of the methodology, I would say, of how you put it together. Tailor it to the role or the type of business. So if you want to bracket agencies together, for example, just so you're not having to tailor your job to every single agency under the sun, but just make sure that if you're doing agency side, that different type of work is closer to the front, so that they may want to see more concept generation, they may want to see more research, they may not be as fussed with design for manufacture, because that's something that end client wise tends to really kind of tap into. So you've got the brief. If you could put that brief together again, how do we solve the problem? Hit us with that attention kind of grabber, that hero shot, that product in action. I'm sure you know what all these things look like, and then you kind of dig deep into the process, right? So the research, the concept generation, some ideation stuff, bit of CAD, CAD packages, SolidWorks, Creo, Siemens. I see from time to time. Not so much Autodesk anymore. Anything like those seems to be the main ones. As long as you're learning them, you're in good stead. Design for manufacture, prototyping. I personally quite like designers that like to prototype. They want to get stuck into the workshop. I think it says a lot about you. Again, that kind of, I don't know, it just says a lot about you as a person, that you're not afraid to, there's no kind of, not ego, but kind of like, you want to just get stuck in there. It says a lot about you. And I think it resonates with employers, that they tend to be a little bit on the older side. And that was something that they kind of feel like is a bit of a dying art, that ability to prototype, model make. And so it's almost like they see themselves in you type thing. People still do it. So again, hand sketching, okay, you can get the iPad out or whatever, but nothing beats kind of getting it on paper. Some renders, some testing, CMF, we said, there's so much other stuff. The method you're going to put this thing together in is in a PDF. Now, contentious one, because I see more and more websites are creeping in. You've got your own little personal brand or whatever. But here's the thing: your job is to design products, not websites. Okay, so the minute you put that barrier up of here's my website, you're judged upon that. So if that website's not optimized, if that website doesn't look good on mobile, if it just you can't, you may have used Wix or whatever, but it just doesn't really look that great, in the grand scheme of things. So avoid it, because you're just putting up a barrier. You're being judged upon something that isn't actually your job, and you don't need to necessarily do it. I think it's best to have both in kind of like, from an application standpoint, I'd use PDF, but I'd have like a website running in the background and maybe parallel it, with your social medias and stuff. But don't necessarily apply through the website, unless you perhaps want to password protect some stuff. But make sure you've got that kind of PDF. 5 megabyte. There's a great Sam Does Design tutorial. I think Sam has got some sort of connection to Middlesex. He's talked in the past, so a name or voice you may have heard. He's got a great tutorial on how you reduce portfolio sizes from these massive, colossal things that get sent through to me on Dropbox to something that's actually not going to make my laptop die. So if you could, in future, keep them at 5 megabyte, my laptop would greatly appreciate that. And I'm sure many other laptops around the world would say the same thing. One thing I would note is, again, I suppose it comes down to this kind of empathy piece, and empathy is one of those things where designers should be pretty good at it, or it should be kind of ingrained into them. The way that some people actually read a portfolio, like I know managers, for example, that read portfolios when they're in bed. And so they don't necessarily want it on a website. Their Wi-Fi might be a bit crap. There's all these little things where you're putting barriers by sending the website, where if you think about it just a little bit deeper, PDF, 5 megabyte, go back to 2007 for a little bit, it's fine. It's not broken, so don't fix it. I can't remember what the saying is, but hopefully that rings true. But I don't know if there's anyone that's got any other additions, do you think, on top of that? Or do you think that covers off how you defined process? Or is there any other things you thought, do I put it in, do I not? Or are we good, Ahmed?
I think we're good to carry on.
I think we're good to carry on. Good stuff. Right, so we're coming up to the end of this now. I can't remember, I don't know how long I've been ranting at you for, but when I started doing these talks, I kind of put a note out on my LinkedIn, I think it was, and I said, to the people of industry, like, if you had one bit of advice for a student today, what would it be? What have you learned? What failures have you so they don't repeat some of the failures that you've kind of failed at all those years ago? and there's 5 here, but I think I had like hundreds of people that kind of messaged and stuff, and it's, God, I don't know, it's on my LinkedIn somewhere. Go and find it. There's some great little tidbits of nuggets of knowledge of people that are in the industry, of kind of what they wish they knew when they were a student. Ironically, number 1 is something we've already spoken about, and that's learn business. And I've already kind of briefly explained why you need to learn business, but more important, actually learn how stuff's made. It's just a great life skill, I think, if you want to be a designer, actually learn how products made. That doesn't necessarily, you may want to still be on that kind of research point, or, really front end industrial design, weird and wacky ideas coming out left, right and center. But if you don't know how stuff's made, you're never really going to get a true appreciation of that. So it's just a great thing to really kind of think about. Number 2 is to talk to people. I don't want to say it's a negative thing to the younger generation, but I've always found that they're not necessarily the most social bunch, in the sense of kind of wanting to talk to people. And that's a learning that I've learned from just going around talking to the universities, is that they almost feel a bit afraid just to talk to someone, or send someone a message on LinkedIn and say, like, hi, can you help me? Or can I have some advice, please? Or so when you're looking for that job in industry, you may not be looking now, you may be looking a little bit later down the line. First port of call is I would look at the Middlesex alumni. Go and see who studied in 2019, 2018, drop them a message, and maybe off the back of this, they're going to get boatloads of messages, but drop them a message and just ask them how their first year in industry went. What did they learn? Hi, here's my portfolio. You was in a similar boat last year. What do you think? Because that rich understanding from those people is going to be far better than what I can tell you, because they've literally been in your shoes. So ask them, are they free for a coffee or a shared screen, and say, look, I'm doing this project, what do you think? It's never been easier to get someone on a shared screen. And as a recruiter, as someone who finds it bloody hard to actually talk to people, it's never been easier to say, can I just grab 10 minutes with you? I've got an idea. What do you think? Honestly, people are up for a chat. And whilst you may struggle to get, you're going to send your CV off and you're not going to get much feedback, and you can think the world's against you, industry does genuinely care. People do genuinely care about, the kids going through the system, and they do want to help. But I think what people do is they always try and talk to the people at the top. Talk to the principal designers, talk to the senior designers, talk to the midweight designers. They're going to give you, they're not used to people kind of messaging them asking for advice. They're like, they'll almost be like quite proud in the fact that, like, oh, you're reaching out to me, and they'll do everything in their power to kind of get you onto the next step of your journey, as kind of blasé as that sounds. Number 3 is that plastic is okay. It's just the utilization of the thing which is a bit of a problem. That's what David Attenborough doesn't necessarily approve of. And I suppose it comes down to the whole thing of, like, tell me what the problem is. If there's not a problem there, then don't design it in the first place. So I think it's that point number 3 is coming more prevalent than ever. But what you're going to realize as your career develops is, and this is something that I get all the time from graduates, is like, they go through the system and it's all about changing the world, and then something happens when they get a job, and then it's all about cost. Because when you get into a company, it's just, I'm really, unfortunately, but it's like, it's all about making sure that it's like on time, build quality is all right, make sure that we can make as much money out of this thing as possible. And so plastic's all right. It's just the utilization of the material, which is a bit of an issue. But I don't want you to think that kind of plastic is the enemy, because it's not. It's just, it's just a learning, I suppose, that you'll go through when you kind of enter the world of work. Number 4 is to be okay with rejection. People will generally just won't like your work. I'm not on everyone's Christmas card list. It's just something that's part of life that you just unfortunately have to get used to. And you've got to build a thick skin. Because the minute you kind of go into your shell is the minute you're going to lose confidence in you as a designer. And as soon as you lose that creative confidence, that's when you get into a downward spiral. And the best advice I would say is to keep in touch. Again, number 2, talk to people. You're all going through this similar thing, aren't you? Of like, we're all going to be looking for work now. So keep in touch with each other. don't all of a sudden just disappear off the face of the planet. You know, keep in touch with each other, and you know, if someone doesn't get the job or whatever, then you know, look out for each other. I remember they made like 900 redundancies at Dyson earlier in the year, and I heard this great story of like one of them just set up a WhatsApp group, and they'd all send each other jobs, you know, every day, and they were all basically competing for the same job, but there was that sense of community, and it's what got them through that quite dark period for them, and they've all found jobs. And so I don't know if you guys have got a WhatsApp group, but just ping jobs in there all the time, and little bits of feedback, or you know, even dare I say Design Truth podcast clips. Just keep that kind of information kind of amongst your peer group, because you know, you've probably made some great friends at university, and equally you can probably be quite savage to each other in terms of feedback, and you're not going to take it too personally. So yeah, definitely be okay with rejection. It's unfortunate, but unfortunately it's the way it is. And number 5 is to get grips with digital. It's just the way the world's going. I'm not saying all of you jump at a UX degree at the next chance, but just understand like the basic principles of it. You know, try maybe take a little quick course on it. I'm not saying, you know, jump full in, but you've just got to be aware of it, because every product now has a connected app, it has a connected experience, it has a connected service to it. It's not just a product you throw at the wall anymore. You know, there's this, it's more than that. So get to grips with it, because it's just where the industry's heading, and it's not going away. And treat that to your advantage, because there are designers right now that, I don't know, studied in 2003, 4, whatever, they're in jobs. You might think they're quite good designers, but even when I was at school, I'm 26, we didn't have Snapchat. You know, the whole digital, it was alien to me, and I'm 26. So bloody hell, how alien is it going to be to someone that's like 40, 45? You know, it's just not a world they know. And that's where, you know, the USP of a grad designer is going to come in, because you're going to be up to date with, you know, Fusion 360 and Blender and all those bits of kit. The senior designers don't know that. They don't necessarily understand how to use those tools. And so that's going to be the key differentiator of why someone at a junior level gets brought into a company. You'll get frustrated. You'll see a job ad and it says 5 years plus of experience. And you think, well, I don't have 5 years experience. How do I get 5 years experience? Trust me, companies need junior designers just as much as you as a junior designer needs the company, because they need your skill set of the new tools and the new techniques and all that kind of stuff. Is that it's alien to some of their designers at a more senior level. So you'd be surprised that don't treat it as like, you treat it on an equal footing of like, they need you just as much as you need them. Now at the start I said like things to avoid in a portfolio, and it's because basically what happens is when you start the conversation on portfolios, is everyone just like gives you a massive list of stuff they don't like. It's just one of those topics where people get so passionate, well, not passionate, but they just get so irate with seeing such below standard work that they don't tell you what they like. They just tell you what they don't like. Maybe that's a reflection of wider society. I don't know. But I'm not going to rattle off those few things there, which are kind of like, try to avoid these things in your portfolio, and it may be useful to you when you're I'll send you the slides, Ahmed, off the back of this, so you can share it with the students and go through it one by one and just make sure you're not kind of falling into those kind of traps. But the message I wanted to share to you, and I'm sharing to the students across, you know, the country at the minute, it's just to avoid giving up hope. That is the key message, because you must be thinking, and a lot of you touched upon it, you know, you're feeling nervous, you're feeling apprehensive. You just avoid giving up hope. The minute you avoid giving up hope of that job, that's when it's going to go. Just keep yourself active. And again, it comes down to, you know, it might sound simple getting in a WhatsApp group with each other, but you know, that's my kind of Mr. Motivator pitch done. Mr. Motivator again is probably someone, Ahmed, way before their time. Just kind of trying to make sure my the people can understand who Mr. Motivator is. Maybe Google him at the back end of this. They're the 3 kind of words I thought people were going to say. I thought you were going to be scared. You know, are there any jobs out there? I'm actually going to say, as a recruiter, there are jobs out there at the minute. I actually think the market's quite busy at the minute. There are just little issues around remote working, physical product design, and, you know, we want, you know, giving out, and you're facing it in your studying, Ahmed, in terms of like, we want to get people into the lab and we can't do that. Remote junior staff, generally, they're hand holding a bit more. So we can't afford as a business to have these people working remotely where they need the training, they need the mentoring, they need the day-to-day, water cooler conversations. And so I can see why people are scared. I can see why people are a bit confused and what's going on in the world, or just a bit annoyed. It's like, I've done my degree, I now just want to get stuck into work. Those what I thought were the feelings were going to be when we kind of set up these calls. But if we stick to the principle that product design is all about solving problems, then 2021 is the year of the product designer, because I've never lived in a world where there's been more problems. And I certainly believe that design is one of those big kind of solutions to that. So stop being scared of it. Stop being scared about those problems. Be inspired. You're never going to have this much freedom again in your kind of lives to club together, start a Kickstarter, do something horrendously wrong, and you're not necessarily going to get kicked out of your house off the back of it. You're in this great period in your life where you can fail and it's not going to massively hurt you. Whereas when you're in your 30s and you think, right, I'm going to start a business, there's so many other things you've got to think about. A partner, maybe kids, a mortgage. You've got none of that. So just fail and then learn from that process. So that was me. I don't know how long I've been speaking to you for, but hopefully you've learned a thing or three off the back of that. Feel free to listen to Design Truth. I think I'm even repping some Design Truth merch at the minute. We hope that it's kind of an honest conversation. Design over the last 7 years, there's some lovely people in it, but there's an awful lot of ego, and there's an awful lot of people that say they're the most amazing thing ever. But what we wanted to do was actually tell you what it's actually like. And yeah, so hopefully people that have listened to it will kind of feel that emotion, that we're not just kissing someone's ass for an hour, we're actually kind of telling it how it is. And as I say, in an era of miscommunication or whatever, there's never been more an important time just to tell the truth. And yeah, thank you for your time. And if you've got any questions, specific or broad, I'll happily do my bit to see if I can either answer them or even point you in the right path. I don't know.
Oh, amazing. Thanks, Bradley. That was a really interesting, really informative lecture on portfolios. Cool. Like really great insights and advice embedded and intertwined throughout that as well. And guys, feel free to gather your thoughts, your questions, your comments in the chat. As usual, there's also an option to go live and interact with your questions and sentiments as well. There are quite a few that I've recorded along the way, so I'll just go through some of those. So Kushwant here, he asked, how good do you have to be at drawing, and how good do you have to be at demonstrating your drawing skills in the portfolio?
Good question. You'll go on Instagram right now and you'll look at all the renders and you look at all the visualizations, think, Jesus Christ, is this how good I've got to be to get a job at these places? I'd say no. I think a lot of them, when you dig deep into the thinking, the problem solving, it's not there. And that's something that me and some of the clients that I work with kind of laugh about quite regularly. But there has to be this kind of like standard. You can't be terrible at it, clearly. I know that's probably very broad and doesn't really necessarily answer your question, but you don't necessarily have to be like the best sketcher in the world. I mean, a lot of the people I follow on Instagram, for example, people that are in industry, that when you're in industry, you don't necessarily see them kind of popping up kind of like sketching all day long and stuff. And I'll see little posts of when they're like in a 4 a.m. supply meeting in China or something. And it's like, that's what the job's actually like, isn't it? It's not actually, what they're presenting. And I'll make a comment saying like, shouldn't you be sketching now? And I'll say, haven't sketched in years or something like that. It's not necessarily the be all and end all, but I think you still need to hit this kind of minimum standard level. But I appreciate it. I don't know if that does actually answer your question, but don't be put off by what you see online, because it isn't necessarily a reality. I hope that helps.
Amazing. And Jerus is asking, like, when you get to the interview, what are the most important questions that you need to ask the employer?
Oh God, good question. Important questions. So I don't know. I think it depends as your career develops. I would probably, at a junior level, I'd want to know about the training and development. That's what I'd want to know about. I want to know, how do you train the people, and what's the average span of average kind of, not lifespan, I'm trying to think, what's the average stay of like an employee, like what's your turnover of staff like? Because if they're like turning staff over every 6 months, and they're not really teaching them, are they? They're just kind of like, it's a one-stop shop type thing, in and out. Whereas if they say, actually, our average employee has been here for 6 years, and you're thinking, okay, there's progression here as well. Like, you'll hear little lines like the creative director was once an intern or something like that. Those are the kind of things you want to know about, is like, am I going to learn anything here? What's the training like? Whereas when you get to another part in your career, you maybe, that's not really as forefront in your mind. But at a junior level, I'd definitely focus on training and development, and get a feel for. And you can also not necessarily ask that into, but think about, again, going on LinkedIn, looking at kind of the people that work there and how long they've been there, and do you know someone that knows that person that can make an introduction? It's like, what's it actually like to work at that company? You know, get it from the horse's mouth, so to speak, rather than kind of hearsay on Glassdoor or whatever. But yeah, hope that answers your question.
That's awesome. And there was a topic of discussion within the main talk about, those individuals who really enjoy the workshop and being hands-on and prototyping. So talk with us. He's asking, where would they go in terms of their role and responsibilities? Like, would they go into agencies, and in terms of their direction for their career?
Both, either or, but I would say you're probably more likely to sit as something that's classified as like a product design engineer. So this kind of taking this concept into a tangible working prototype. Those positions are both in-house and agency, traditionally more in-house, but I do see agencies that are starting to creep that into their offering. But on that side of things, you're probably working with more startups, because kind of the big players, they're going to do that all themselves internally, in-house.
Awesome. And Navpreet, she's asked a question that if she didn't like her final outcome, but she documented the process really well in terms of the project, in your opinion, would it be okay to include the process but not the final product renders?
I don't know. I'd probably still put the renders in, because it's like this project by project piece of like, yeah, but maybe don't put that as your best piece of work on the front. Maybe put that as like project 3 or something. Don't lead with that. But yeah, that would be my answer to that.
Yeah, I totally agree with that as well. It's like, for example, having a process but nothing at the end kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, you still need to show what the end result was.
Exactly. And then Pfizer, she asks, do you have any examples of like exemplary portfolios that you could either show us or signpost us towards?
There is this, I'll see if I can track it down for you now, and I'll ping it across to you. But the point I made at the start was like, look at the companies you want to work for, look at the designers that work for those companies, go on Google, type their name in Google and industrial design. You'll most likely see a portfolio of theirs from time, and normally those ones are pretty good. And then you also can like see, like, particularly when you get graduate ones, it's like you can actually like compare yourself a little bit. It's like, so this is what they were doing when they were like someone that's working for a big player or something. Like, this is what their grad CV looked like, or their grad portfolio looked like. How am I stacking up to that? What are they doing that's working, or what are they doing that, or actually, am I better than this person? Does it give you hope in the sense of, actually, they're not as good as what they were cracked up to be? So yeah, do that. Maybe reverse psychology it and kind of look at the companies, look at the people that work for the companies, and then basically be a social media stalker for an afternoon and try and find their old work.
Amazing. And I'll kind of rep the design truth as well here. So like, if you check Bradley's blog post as well, there's one called The Perfect Industrial Design Portfolio. So just a pretty short read. And at the end, then Bradley's talking about the countless design portfolios he's seen, and the ones that stuck on his mind as well. So he's signpost, and he's linked a few there in terms of
good plug,
and a few there. So yeah, so definitely check those out as well.
Yeah, there's one. I remember a chap called James Hudson that put together, and he was a grad, but he did it in a form of a book, which I thought was really nice, quite novel. So yeah, if there's anyone you want to look at, I'd look at James's, and he works for an agency called Keach now off the back of that. And yeah, I've always remembered that one. So he's someone that you kind of, as a recruiter, you're kind of thinking, he's someone I should keep in regular kind of touch with, because he's someone that's showing. I don't personally do graduate recruitment, but it's like you see that work early on. It's like, I want to follow that guy because I know he's gonna get a good job somewhere, and you can see it really early on. The ones that are gonna shine, and the ones that maybe aren't quite good enough to make it.
Amazing. And talk with us. So you wanted to ask a question live, so feel free to
go for it. Yeah, go for it.
Yeah. So thank you again, Brad. It was super, super insightful and amazing to actually talk with a recruiter, because most of the time we show the
Probably don't hear anything back, I'd imagine.
not that, but we show the portfolios to our designers, and you are the ones that actually make a decision to get the interview or not, and then we speak with designers from the team most of the time. So my question would be actually, what is importance of, let's say, recommendations and putting down your achievements into portfolio? Let's say if you have some award, if you were recognized for something big, or you have, let's say, a journal publication on your junior years, depends on the person. Is it important to put that?
I would say so, yeah. And actually, it's good you asked that question, because I would actually put your CV on your portfolio. So your page 2 or whatever should be your CV. And on there, you'd probably most likely put achievements, wouldn't you, or something like that. So, there are certain awards, I'm pretty sure Joseph do an award, for example, and I'm sure if you've won that award or the Dyson award or whatever, it probably stands you in good stead, I'd imagine, as a junior designer. It becomes less relevant as your career progresses, naturally, because it's like, I'm not interested in an award you won 5 years ago, for example. But as someone that's kind of in that earlier infancy, and you probably haven't got an awful lot you can show or talk about, I think if you've won an award, then I'd put it in there, for sure.
Thank you so much.
That's all right.
And Dujar's asking, do you have any advice in terms of finding job opportunities? He says that he hasn't really seen much.
Finding job opportunities. How I would go about it is, I would stop looking at vacancy pages and I would start talking to people. So again, I don't know, 50 companies that you look at the website and go, that looks quite cool. What's to stop you just from approaching them? Why are you waiting to see what pops up on the vacancy page? It's this kind of proactive, reactive mentality of like, just go out there and just talk to people, talk to the lead designer there and say, look, here's my work. What do you think? Trust me, if your work is good, that person makes the connection, sends it to their director and say, I've just received this grad portfolio, looks pretty good. Have we got anything going on at the minute? And you're making that kind of personal relationship and connection with people in the industry. Reverse psychology, and go that way rather than just going on Indeed and seeing what's out there. There's only so much job searching you can do. It's like when I used to work, before I did this job, I used to work at a job centre. So I've gone from this extreme of like seeing people the job I do now, like squabble over £400 a day, to the job before where like people had their benefits cut and you'd see that emotional impact that would have on people. And it's amazing. Like the job centre would say like, you need to do like 20 hours of job searching in a week or something. It's like, how can you search for a job for 20 hours? It's like, you can't physically do that before your mind just explodes because of the rejection and stuff. So just talk to people. And I think those kind of small little gains over a longer period of time, you start to feel a bit more kind of mentally happy as well. And I think that you can tell when someone's feeling a little bit down or they're doubting themselves when they put that application across. You can just kind of feel it, when you speak to them and you see it in the words, maybe they're kind of things like, I'm sorry that I'm sending you a CV. It's almost like, you shouldn't be apologizing for sending something to me. It's like this kind of where you're kind of positioning yourself down here for some of the language that you're using. It's like, don't apologize to me for sending your work. Like, you've got nothing to apologize about. And it's the same with companies as well. Don't apologize for saying, I'm sorry that, or whatever. Just look, here's my work. I'd love to get your opinion on this. Is there any way I could just spend 5 minutes on a Zoom call with you next week? Some people will say yes, honestly. And that insight you'll get from that 5-minute conversation is far better than what you got in the last hour from me anyway.
Thanks, Brad. And Brady, you wanted to go live. Feel free to unmute yourself.
Thanks, Brad. Got to say, your first name, last name combination, it's looking real
good,
nice.
It's looking good, yeah.
But you would mention doing some personal products or personal projects to fill in your portfolio if you felt like you needed to fill it in, or if that's just something you're doing. Are there things that you would avoid doing, or particular kinds of personal projects
The one I don't like, Brady. The one I don't like is Spotify UI.
All right.
Do not try to redesign the UI of Spotify. They're doing a pretty good job as it is. It's like there are certain things that like I actually know that there are certain when new designers used to be on, there used to be a drinking game that used to happen where they used to like guess the final year products, and if they used to see the same things pop up, it's almost like they'd laugh at a little bit. It's like there always used to be one for like a folding helmet. I can't tell you how many folding helmets I've seen in the portfolio. Honestly, it's like there are so many more problems out there. Like the folding helmet's been done, guys. But one bit of advice I would say is like for the personal projects, try and like correlate it with the kind of work you're trying to apply to. And that also applies to your final year project as well. So Entia that we spoke about earlier, Honor was the junior designer we had on, and she got a job there. Her final year product was all about remote monitoring. And so it was this perfect kind of unison fit of like transitioning into industry. So like if you're thinking like, oh, I'd quite like to work for those kind of companies, make sure your final year product is in sync with that kind of aspiration. Because it just stands you in better stead, I think, of kind of impressing them. Anyway, does that answer your question?
Yeah, absolutely. Because the thing I think about in terms of both doing like traditional product design products, but also like in an effort to sort of show like, you know, who I am. I do a lot of stuff around the house of just rigging this, or I create something to fit this one particular problem that it could never be developed into a product.
Yeah,
but is more a demonstration of one, my thinking, but also just kind of who I am, the stuff that I like to do. Is that stuff that you would include, or would you just leave that aside and maybe bring that as anecdotal stuff to an interview?
Anecdotal, I think. I spoke to a graduate designer yesterday because I don't speak to them often, but I spent 10 minutes with this chap on the phone. He was a little bit annoyed with his degree. He didn't go to Middlesex, so don't worry. And he was, and he said something like, I don't have access to blue foam at the minute, and I'm having to make this thing out of a cardboard box or a cereal box. And I was like, that's perfect. That is what you need to be doing. Like, because that is what resonates with the people who are design directors. And because that's what they did when they were younger.
Right.
They make things out of spare parts because that's the way their brain works. And so, yeah, I'm all for things like that, doing things around the house, or you've made something, as long as it's that kind of like, it's that proof of principle, isn't it? It's like this thing works. Yeah.
Right.
That yeah. So definitely show it. It might not look the most pretty thing to put on a portfolio, but I think anecdotal, and even if it's just a line or two in the CV, just to kind of get out that personality of like, I'm not just a designer, I'm also like rigging things, and things like that. I think that kind of, it says a bit about more of you as a character, and that's what separates you from the other person that's just said, here's my work, what do you think?
Right. Awesome. Appreciate it.
Amazing. And Vanessa, she's talking about the quantity, right? So in terms of what amount of projects is not acceptable to have in a portfolio?
Controversial, but it depends how good the work is. So if the work's really good, you can just crack on all day, as far as I'm concerned. But 3 or 4 projects, I'd say 3 or 4 should be enough. I would also say that you want to keep some stuff up your sleeve as well. So showing all your cards, like, here's my work. You want to keep something in the back pocket for the interview. It's like, oh, I did work on this. And it's like, oh, I didn't know you did that. And it's like, okay, there's more to this person than what I can see. So yeah, kind of tease them with a few bits, but then make sure, obviously show your best stuff, but make sure you've still got some stuff up your sleeve. But it just gets so much easier as your career develops, right? Because you've just got more stuff you can fall back on. But that's where you find personal projects. I don't know, you might find around the house. Instagram, there are these kind of design challenges that are popping up that are just this kind of form of inspiration for you. And then you kind of, I don't know, I mean, we spoke to one startup company on the podcast of a guy that basically his grandma couldn't make the bed anymore because she was getting a little bit old, and he basically came up with this novel product of like when you're making the bed, that the zips down the middle rather than the end. He now it's like a fully funded startup. From the back of it, it's all started from a problem around the house, and it's got X million in funding, and that's because he solved an everyday problem. So there's problems all around you. You've just got to kind of go in with an open mind, and it could start off with just a novel conversation you've had with someone, and all of a sudden that sparks that kind of personal project. So yeah, there's ideas all around the place.
Amazing. And a question from Imran. So in terms of CVs that you see, in your opinion, is it best to like structure it in terms of experience by jobs, or split it into experience and projects?
Jobs, I guess, I suppose. Yeah, CVs aren't the most complicated things in the world. Just kind of a little bit about who you are as a person. The work does more of the talking than the CV anyway. So just have all the basic information that's there, all the CAD packages you use and stuff. Just make sure the spelling's right, the grammar's right. It shows a little bit of personality, but it's the work that does the talking more than the CV. Unless you're going down more of an engineering route, for example, whereas engineers don't put portfolios together, and when they do, they look pretty horrible. So just that from a CV standpoint, they may lean a bit more onto that. But if you're applying for a design gig, then it's the work that's the talking point.
Amazing. And then in Joseph Salem's asking, in terms of your experience, like what's the average salary for a junior designer or a junior design engineer, and how much can it go up to?
Yeah, so if you go on, shameless plug, if you go on designtruth.co.uk, you'll see a free PDF salary guide. You just download it. I don't ask your email or anything like that, all these kind of weird marketing ploys that these companies do, and they spam you with a newsletter afterwards. Just go and download it, and it's got all the information there for you from salaries across your career. It's a little bit location specific. It gives you some context to why salaries are higher in certain regions and what you've got to do to get there. So yeah, go on the website, download the guide. It's been downloaded thousands of times, and in a couple of years' time, when you've got a job and you're in your next salary review, make sure that you say that I read the Design Truth salary review and it says I should be earning X amount, and you go armed with the information, and it will make sure you're getting paid what you should be getting paid as a designer. So it's all there for you.
That's the designtruth.co.uk/salary guide. Yeah, feel
Good
free
stuff.
to download that PDF.
Shameless. Thanks, Ahmed.
And then Tom Millward, he's asking, if a company rejected me before because of the state of the portfolio, like it was a large file size, etc., will they be more likely to consider me in the future if I vamp it up?
I wouldn't. It's a difficult one, isn't it? Because you want to seem keen, but you don't want to seem desperate. Again, I'd go down that kind of advice route of like, hey, I sent you this thing 6 months ago and didn't go anywhere, and that's cool, but I've got this new portfolio. What do you think? But maybe go to a different contact within the company, or just again, asking for this advice tends to get better response than saying, hi, I'm looking to work for your company. Maybe that might, as an approach, it may yield a little bit more better success. But you're absolutely right. You don't want to be like sending your portfolio every week to the same people, because they'll eventually be like, Tom, stop. And that's the last thing you want to do.
Amazing. And then the last couple of questions, one from Kushwan, is saying, would you recommend taking 3D products and prototypes to an interview?
Yes. 100%. 100%. You design a physical product, have a physical product with you, whether it's, on a shared screen or whatever, come armed with something, because the ones that do are normally the ones that get the job.
Awesome. And then the final question, and this relates to the design engineers, in terms of an alternative to portfolios, like how can they kind of showcase their skill set, and what's the best way of sharing videos if they had videos?
Videos. I don't see many videos, but could be quite novel, so could work. Engineers, they do put portfolios together. They're just not the most visually pretty things in the world, but it was a little joke I made there, to be honest with you. No one's expecting it to look like an industrial design portfolio. It may just have some FEA stuff or some CAD stuff that you've done, but don't worry, it doesn't need to look as great. And not all companies really ask for portfolios from engineers, to be honest with you. So I wouldn't wouldn't kind of stress about that much if you're an engineer. Quite a lot of companies don't really ask for portfolios from engineers. If we're talking like mechanical engineering, electronic software, product design engineering, yeah, you'll get asked for a portfolio for that. But if it's like down that electronics route or whatever, you shouldn't get asked for a portfolio. You may do, but it'll isolated instance. It's not the norm.
Amazing. So Bradley, thanks again. Thanks again for the talk and taking out the time to join us this evening, even those bonus minutes at the end as well with the Q&A. It was a superb lecture. And guys, in the coming weeks, this will be available as a recording as well. So Bradley, please do stay in touch, and hopefully in the nearest future, post-COVID, we would love to host you on campus as well. And for all students, staff, alumni, participants, thanks for the interaction. You guys were brilliant, and we really look forward to seeing you guys again next week. So keep an eye out on your emails for the details of the next speaker and links to the next talk as well. Until next time, stay well, stay safe, and thank you guys.
Yeah, look after yourself, everyone. See you later.
Cheers. Thanks, Ahmad. Thanks, Brad.
Yeah, see you, Ahmed.